The Great Hall of the Galactic Council shook as another report came in. Ambassador Zekthor stood at the center podium with his forearms trembling. His purple skin had turned pale and his large eyes showed pure fear. Around him sat representatives from 47 different alien species, and every single one of them looked terrified. "The Kreks have taken another system," Zekthor announced. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "The Altair colonies are gone. 2 billion souls consumed in less than a week." A wave of horrified gasps swept through the assembled aliens. Chancellor Morden of the Crystal People leaned forward in his chair. His transparent body flickered with nervous energy. "How many systems is that now?" 15, General Veltar hissed from his serpent-like coils. 15 star systems in 8 months at this rate. They will reach the core worlds within a year. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed a 3-dimensional map of their galaxy. Red zones marked Krex-controlled space, spreading like a disease across the star map. What had started as a small dot on the outer rim now covered nearly a tenth of known space. Zekthor touched his control panel and the display zoomed in on the latest battle reports. The images were horrifying. Planets stripped bare of all organic matter. Space filled with the broken hulks of once proud fleets. Billions of beings simply gone, consumed by the insatiable hunger of the Krex horde. "Our combined fleets cannot stop them," Admiral Kethra spoke from her floating chair. The aquatic being's gills fluttered with distress. "We lost another battle group at Proxima 7 yesterday. The bioships just absorbed our plasma fire and kept coming. They adapt too quickly," added Commander Yixtal of the Insectoid Hive, Confederation. "Every weapon we use against them becomes less effective. Their armor evolves. Their tactics improve. It's like fighting an enemy that learns from every battle." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of the life support systems. These were the greatest military minds in the galaxy, leaders of civilizations that had mastered space travel thousands of years ago, and they were losing badly to an enemy that treated war like a feeding frenzy. Chancellor Morden's crystal form pulsed with desperate energy. "We need new allies, species with different technologies, different approaches to warfare." "Who is left?" General Veltar asked. "Every major civilization is already part of the Council or has been destroyed by the Krex." Zekthor hesitated before answering. "There is one possibility. The humans from the 3rd planet of the Sol system." A collective shudder ran through the chamber. Several representatives made sounds of disgust or fear. The humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 3 years ago. Their first contact with galactic civilization had been accidental, when one of their primitive ships had crashed into a Viridian patrol vessel. "The barbarians?" Admiral Kethra's voice showed her shock. "Their entire planet is covered in the wreckage of wars. They fight each other constantly over resources, territory, and ideas that make no sense to civilized minds. Their technology is crude," Commander Yixtal added. "Metal ships powered by chemical reactions, weapons that throw pieces of metal at each other. They haven't even developed basic energy shields." General Veltar coiled tighter around his platform. "They are violent beyond reason. Their history is nothing but endless conflict. War after war after war. They seem to enjoy killing each other." "Exactly," Zekthor said quietly. "Perhaps that is what we need." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Representatives argued in dozens of different languages, while the translator systems struggled to keep up. The idea of asking the humans for help seemed insane to most of them. Chancellor Morden raised his crystalline hand for silence. "Explain your reasoning, Ambassador." Zekthor activated the display again, this time showing tactical analyses of human conflicts. "Look at their methods of warfare. They don't fight to minimize casualties like we do. They fight to win at any cost. They use weapons designed to cause maximum damage and fear." The display showed images from human history that made the aliens uncomfortable. Massive explosions that could destroy entire cities. Weapons that poisoned the land for generations. Soldiers who fought to the death rather than surrender. "They have something we have lost," Zekthor continued. "They understand that sometimes survival requires brutality. They know how to fight enemies that cannot be reasoned with or negotiated with." Admiral Kethra's gills fluttered nervously. But they are so primitive. What could they possibly do against bioships that our advanced weapons cannot? Sometimes primitive methods work where advanced ones fail, Zekthor replied. The Krek's bioarmor is designed to absorb and redirect energy weapons. But what if we used weapons that don't rely on energy? What if we fought them the way humans fight each other? General Veltar uncoiled slightly. You're suggesting we abandon 10,000 years of civilized warfare and resort to barbarism? I'm suggesting we adapt or die, Zekthor said firmly. The Kreks are not civilized enemies. They don't follow rules of engagement. They don't accept surrender. They consume everything in their path. Maybe it takes barbarians to fight barbarians. The debate continued for hours. Species after species voiced their concerns about working with the humans. They were unpredictable, violent, and completely alien in their thinking. But as the reports continued to come in from the front lines, the alternatives became clear. Finally, Chancellor Morden called for a vote. All in favor of requesting human assistance? The vote was close, but it passed. 25 species voted yes, 22 voted no. It was enough. Within hours, a message was transmitted across the galaxy, to the small blue planet at the edge of known space. The message was simple and desperate. The Galactic Council requests immediate military assistance against an existential threat to all organic life. In exchange for aid, we offer advanced technology, full council membership, and access to galactic trade routes. On Earth, the message was received by Admiral Jake Morrison at the United Defense Command headquarters in Colorado. The old soldier read the transmission twice before calling an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The conference room filled quickly with Earth's top military leaders. These were men and women who had fought in wars across the planet, who understood the cost of conflict better than any alien could imagine. Admiral Morrison stood at the head of the table and activated the holographic display showing the galactic situation. Red zones marking Krek's territory painted an ugly picture across the star map. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "the aliens are in trouble, big trouble, and they want our help." General Lisa Carter leaned forward. "What kind of trouble, Jake?" Morrison played the tactical reports that had been included with the request. The room fell silent as they watched footage of Krek's bioships tearing through alien fleets like paper. Planets stripped bare of life, billions of beings consumed by an enemy that fought like a swarm of locusts. "Jesus," whispered General Tom Bradley. "How many of these things are there?" "Intelligence estimates suggest trillions of individual bioships, organized into hive fleets," Morrison replied. "They reproduce rapidly, adapt to enemy tactics, and show no mercy whatsoever." Colonel Janet Murphy studied the tactical data. "The aliens are losing badly. Their entire approach to warfare is wrong for this kind of enemy." "How so?" asked Admiral Morrison. "They fight like civilized beings," Murphy explained. "Minimum casualties, rules of engagement, acceptance of surrender. But look at these Kreks, they're not civilized, they're apex predators that view everything else as food." General Carter nodded slowly. "And they want us because we know how to fight apex predators." Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. "The question is, do we help them?" The room was quiet for a long moment. These leaders had seen enough war to know its true cost. But they had also seen what happened when good people did nothing against evil. "They're not asking for our help because they respect us," General Bradley pointed out. "They're asking because they're desperate, and they think we're expendable," added Colonel Murphy. "Admiral," Morrison looked around the room at faces that had seen too much combat, made too many hard decisions. "Maybe we are, but that doesn't change the facts. There's an enemy out there that wants to consume everything living, and right now we might be the only ones who can stop them." General Carter leaned back in her chair. "What are you thinking, Jake?" Morrison's smile turned cold. "I'm thinking it's time to show the galaxy what Earth's deadliest really means." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any meeting in the organization's 1,000-year history. Representatives from 47 species filled the great chamber aboard Harmony Prime, but all eyes were focused on the small group of humans standing at the center podium. General Carl Murphy stood with the casual confidence of someone who had spent 40 years learning how to wage war efficiently. The old soldier's uniform bore the marks of campaigns across 3 different planets, and his weathered face showed no concern about being surrounded by aliens who looked at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Beside him, Dr. Janet Pierce adjusted her tablet and prepared to deliver information that would change galactic warfare forever. The xenobiologist had spent the past month studying Krek's biology and tactics, and her findings were disturbing in ways the aliens couldn't imagine. The reports from Kepler 442 have been analyzed by our best military minds, General Murphy began. His voice carried easily through the vast chamber. Captain Rodriguez and his crew destroyed 17 Krek's bioships in a single engagement. Our losses were 0. A ripple of amazed whispers ran through the assembled aliens. General Veltar uncoiled from his serpentine platform and hissed softly. "This seems impossible, General Murphy. Our combined fleets have been fighting the Kreks for 8 months and have managed to destroy only 4 of their vessels." Chancellor Morden's crystal body pulsed with nervous energy. "Your weapons appeared primitive when we first encountered your species. Metal projectiles and chemical explosives. How can such crude technology succeed where our plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes have failed?" General Murphy smiled in a way that made several aliens uncomfortable. "That's where you're wrong, Chancellor. Our weapons aren't primitive. They're perfected. While your people were developing faster-than-light travel and energy manipulation, we were learning how to kill each other more efficiently." Dr. Pierce activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. The image showed a detailed analysis of Krek's bioship construction, with callouts highlighting weak points and structural vulnerabilities. "The Krek's bioships are grown rather than built," she explained. "They're essentially massive living creatures with armor, weapons, and propulsion systems integrated into their biological structure. This gives them several advantages. They can heal damage over time, adapt to new threats, and operate without traditional mechanical weak points." Admiral Kethra leaned forward in her floating chair, her gills fluttering with interest. "Then how did you defeat them so easily?" "Because biological armor has different properties than manufactured materials," Dr. Pierce continued. "It's designed to absorb and redistribute energy attacks like your plasma weapons. The living tissue actually feeds on certain types of energy, making the ship stronger. But kinetic weapons work differently." The display shifted to show slow-motion footage from the recent battle. Railgun slugs punched through bio-armor that had previously shrugged off plasma fire, leaving massive wounds that couldn't heal fast, enough to matter. "Kinetic energy can't be absorbed the same way," Murphy explained. "A chunk of metal moving at 30,000 kilometers per second doesn't care how evolved your armor is. It's going to punch a hole through whatever it hits." "Commander." Yixtal of the Hive Confederation clicked his mandibles nervously. "But surely the Kreks will adapt to these new weapons as they have to our attacks." "They might try," Murphy replied. "But adaptation takes time, and we don't fight the way you do. We don't give enemies time to adapt." Ambassador Zekthor spoke from his position at the Viridian delegation. His forearms gestured anxiously as he addressed the human officers. "General Murphy, your tactics showed no mercy, no honor. You destroyed every enemy vessel completely rather than attempting to disable them for capture." "Honor?" Murphy's laugh was bitter and cold. "Ambassador, let me ask you something. How many Krek's prisoners have your fleets taken in 8 months of fighting?" The alien fell silent, unable to answer. "How many Krek ships have surrendered when faced with defeat?" Again, silence. "How many worlds have the Kreks conquered where they left the population alive to negotiate terms?" Zekthor's purple skin turned pale. "None. They consume everything." "Exactly," Murphy said. "You're trying to fight an honorable war against an enemy that views honor as weakness. The Kreks don't take prisoners because they don't see other species as people. They see us as food." Dr. Pierce brought up new displays showing Krek's behavioral patterns and communication intercepts. "Our analysis suggests the Kreks operate on a hive mind principle similar to Earth's social insects. Individual bioships have limited intelligence, but they're controlled by larger command vessels that function as queens. This is actually familiar territory for us, Murphy continued. We've fought hive-minded enemies before. Not just insects, but terrorist cells, criminal networks, and distributed computer systems. The principle is always the same. Identify the command structure, sever the communication links, and exploit the chaos that follows. General Veltar coiled tighter around his platform. You speak of warfare as if it were a science. It is a science, Murphy replied firmly. The most important science our species has ever developed. While you were building paradise worlds and exploring the galaxy in peace, we were locked in a constant struggle for survival on a planet where everything wanted to kill us. The holographic display changed to show images from Earth's history that made many aliens turn away in disgust. Massive battles involving millions of soldiers, weapons that could destroy entire cities, conflicts that lasted for years or decades. We fought each other for resources, territory, ideology, and survival, Murphy explained. Every war taught us new lessons about tactics, strategy, and the psychology of combat. We learned how to fight in space, on land, underwater, and in the air. We developed weapons for every possible situation and enemy. Captain Rodriguez appeared via holographic transmission from his ship. The battle-scarred officer looked tired but alert as he addressed the council. Generals, we've completed our analysis of the Kepler 442 engagement. The Krex showed several tactical weaknesses that we can exploit. Such as, asked Admiral Kethra. They attack in predictable swarm patterns, Rodriguez reported. Individual bioships are aggressive but not particularly intelligent. They rely on overwhelming numbers and superior firepower rather than complex tactics. Against enemies who fight defensively, this works perfectly. Against enemies who understand combined arms warfare, it's a recipe for disaster. Dr. Pierce nodded. The Krex have never faced opponents who understood their biology and adapted tactics accordingly. They expect energy weapons, defensive maneuvering, and attempts to minimize casualties. They don't expect kinetic weapons, aggressive attacks, and strategies designed to maximize enemy losses. But your methods are so brutal, Zekthor protested. The complete destruction, the lack of any attempt to preserve life. Murphy's expression hardened. Ambassador, show me the mercy the Krex showed to the 2 billion people on Altair Prime. Show me the prisoners they took when they conquered the Rigel colonies. Show me one negotiated surrender in their entire history of expansion. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Krex are apex predators, Murphy continued. They've evolved to consume other species completely. They don't understand concepts like mercy or surrender because these ideas are evolutionarily disadvantageous for their survival strategy. The only thing they respect is superior force. Chancellor Mordoon's crystal form flickered with uncertain light. What are you suggesting, General? I'm suggesting that you've been trying to fight a swarm of sharks with strongly worded diplomatic protests, Murphy replied. The Krex can't be reasoned with, negotiated with, or converted to your way of thinking. They can only be stopped by superior predators. Commander Harrison's image appeared next to Rodriguez on the communication display. Sirs, we're receiving intelligence reports from our deep space reconnaissance missions. The Krex are massing for a major offensive. Preliminary estimates suggest over 50,000 bioships in various staging areas. The aliens gasped in horror. 50,000 bioships represented more firepower than the entire Galactic Council could field. Where are they planning to attack? Asked General Veltar. Everywhere, Harrison replied grimly. Intelligence suggests simultaneous strikes on 12 core worlds, including the Council capital at Centauri Prime. Panic erupted in the chamber, as representatives realized their homeworlds were under threat, but General Murphy raised his hand for silence. This is actually good news, he announced. The aliens stared at him in shock. Admiral Kethra's gills fluttered with outrage. How can you possibly call this good news? Because they're massing their forces, Murphy explained. The Krex have been smart so far, hitting isolated systems with small fleets that could retreat if necessary, but now they're concentrating their entire military strength for one decisive campaign. Dr. Pierce brought up tactical projections on the display. From a strategic standpoint, this represents our best opportunity to end the war quickly. Instead of hunting down scattered fleets across the galaxy, we can engage their entire military force in a single campaign. But 50,000 ships, Zekthor whispered. How can anyone defeat such numbers? The Krex homeworld of Zentar hung in space like a diseased tumor, its surface covered with towering hive spires that stretched into the upper atmosphere. Organic factories the size of continents pulsed with bioluminescent activity, producing new bioships at a rate that would have terrified any civilized species. Around the planet, defense platforms the size of small moons bristled with weapons that had never been breached in the Krex species' 1,000-year history of conquest. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Leviathan, Earth's newest and most powerful warship, studying the tactical display with the cold focus of someone who had spent his entire life preparing for battles like this. Around him, officers from every major conflict in human history worked at their stations with the quiet efficiency of people who knew they were probably going to die. "Final fleet count, Colonel Brooks," Morrison ordered. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Brooks looked up from his station where intelligence data flowed across multiple screens. The former Special Forces operator had spent months analyzing Krex tactics and weaknesses. 47 human vessels operational, Admiral. Everything from heavy cruisers down to fast attack craft. Morrison nodded grimly. 47 ships against the largest concentration of enemy forces in galactic history. The orbital defense network alone mounted enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, and intelligence suggested over 100,000 bioships were stationed in system. Commander Sarah Mitchell approached from the Marine briefing area. The former Navy SEAL turned Space Marine commander carried herself with the lethal grace of someone who had fought in more ground actions than she cared to remember. "Sir, all assault teams are ready for planetary operations." "How many Marines do we have for ground assault, Commander?" Morrison asked. 12,000, sir. Plus support equipment and enough ammunition to level a small city." Morrison almost smiled at that. 12,000 Marines to assault a planet defended by billions of Krex warriors. By any reasonable military standard, it was suicide. But then, humans had never been particularly reasonable when it came to warfare. "Dr. Williams, status on the psychological warfare package?" Dr. Kate Williams looked up from her station, where alien communication frequencies scrolled across her screens. The former CIA psychological operations specialist had spent her career understanding how to break enemy morale and create confusion in hostile forces. "Ready to broadcast, Admiral. The Krex command nodes should receive our full package within minutes of transmission." The package was something no alien species had ever conceived of, pure psychological warfare designed to exploit the Krex hive mind structure. Williams had crafted a collection of images, sounds, and data that would confuse and terrify the enemy in ways they had never experienced. "What exactly are you sending them?" asked Colonel Brooks. Williams smiled coldly. "Everything that makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy. Audio recordings of human soldiers singing before battle, laughing in the face of death, and showing defiance even when facing certain defeat. Images from our greatest military victories against impossible odds, and most importantly, tactical data showing how we fight when we have nothing left to lose." Morrison understood the strategy. The Krex had conquered dozens of species, but every single one had fought defensively, trying to minimize casualties and preserve their civilization. The concept of a species that would sacrifice everything to ensure their enemy's destruction was completely alien to the Krex worldview. "Signal from Earth Command, Admiral," reported Communications Officer Alex Chen, the former hacker turned military cyber warfare specialist. Morrison activated the long-range communication system. General Murphy's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from the command bunker deep beneath the Colorado mountains. "Jake, what's your status?" Murphy asked. 47 ships ready for assault, sir. All teams briefed and equipped. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Murphy nodded. Behind him, other officers worked at stations filled with battle reports from across the galaxy. "The Krex have launched their offensive against the core worlds. 12 simultaneous attacks on major population centers. The aliens are getting slaughtered." Morrison had expected this. While Earth's fleet had been racing toward the Krex homeworld, the enemy had launched their long-planned final offensive. By the time the battle for Zentar was finished, billions of alien civilians might be dead. How long before their fleets reach Earth? Morrison asked. Intelligence estimates 72 hours, Murphy replied grimly. If we can't break their command structure and stop this offensive, humanity dies with the rest of the galaxy. The bridge fell quiet except for the hum of the ship's systems. Every person present understood the stakes. This wasn't just about saving alien civilizations anymore. This was about the survival of everything they had ever known or cared about. Orders, sir? Morrison asked. Murphy's expression became predatory. Show them what happens when they threaten our home, Admiral. Show them why humans are the galaxy's apex predators. The communication ended, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts and the weight of command. He looked around the bridge at faces that showed no fear, only grim determination. These people had volunteered for a mission that was almost certainly suicide, and they had done it without hesitation. All hands, this is Admiral Morrison, he announced over the ship-wide communication system. In 60 minutes we begin the assault on Zentar. The enemy has more ships, better technology, and defensive advantages we can't match. By any reasonable standard, we should retreat and try to negotiate. He paused, looking around the bridge at officers who had never learned to retreat from anything. But we're not reasonable people. We're humans, and we don't surrender when innocent. Lives are at stake. Today we show the galaxy what that means. The assault began not with a frontal attack, but with something the Kreks had never experienced: coordinated psychological warfare. Dr. Williams activated her transmission package, broadcasting across all Kreks communication frequencies simultaneously. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Kreks hive mind, accustomed to fighting enemies who showed fear in the face of superior numbers, suddenly encountered something completely alien. Humans who became more dangerous when faced with impossible odds. Audio recordings of human soldiers, singing before the D-Day landings, laughing as they charged enemy positions and shouting defiance at overwhelming odds confused the Kreks command nodes. These sounds made no evolutionary sense to creatures whose survival strategy was based on intimidating prey into submission. But the real shock came with the tactical data. Footage from Thermopylae, Stalingrad, Iwo Jima, and a dozen other battles, where humans had fought to the death against superior forces. The Kreks tried to process this information and failed. The concept of a species that fought harder when losing was incomprehensible to them. That moment of confusion was all Admiral Morrison needed. Launch Phase 1, he ordered. What followed was not the elegant space combat the galaxy was used to, but something far more brutal. Human military doctrine applied to interstellar warfare. Stealth ships, invisible to the biosensors the Kreks relied on, slipped past the orbital defenses carrying nuclear mines and cyber warfare payloads. Alex Chen and his team unleashed computer viruses designed specifically to disrupt hive mind communications. The programs, based on decades of experience fighting networked enemies on Earth, spread through the Kreks communication grid like wildfire. But the real masterstroke came from Marine Colonel Diana Ross, the urban warfare specialist who had studied the Kreks social structure and found their critical weakness. Admiral, she reported as her Marines prepared for planetary insertion, the Kreks Queen Mothers aren't just military commanders. They're literally the genetic parents of entire bioship fleets. Take out a queen, and her offspring become confused, disoriented and vulnerable. Morrison understood immediately. How many queens are we looking at, Colonel? Intelligence suggests 12 primary queens controlling the orbital defenses, plus approximately 50 secondary queens managing planetary operations. What happens to orphaned bioships? Colonel Ross smiled grimly. The same thing that happens to any children who lose their mother suddenly and violently, sir. They panic, they become erratic, and they stop functioning as an organized force. The assault on Zentar wasn't just military action. It was applied human psychology on a galactic scale. While stealth ships planted nuclear mines throughout the orbital defense network, Marine assault teams launched directly at the planet's surface with one specific mission: kill every Kreks queen they could find. The landing was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of establishing secure beachheads and advancing cautiously, The human Marines scattered across the planet's surface in small teams designed to cause maximum chaos. Each team carried enough firepower to level city blocks and had been trained to fight independently without central command. Colonel Ross led the primary assault team directly at the largest hive complex, where intelligence suggested the primary queen was located. Her Marines moved through the organic corridors like wolves in a sheep pen, using weapons the Krex had never encountered. Flamethrowers turned living walls into infernos. Explosive charges brought down hive structures that had stood for centuries. The UES Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, with all the grace of a falling brick. The human warship was nothing like the elegant vessels that usually traveled between the stars. Where alien ships curved and flowed like works of art, the Retribution was all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Captain Ben Rodriguez stood on the bridge and studied the tactical display. Around him, his crew worked at stations that looked primitive compared to alien technology. No floating holograms or crystal interfaces, just metal panels, physical switches, and screens that glowed with harsh white light. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, called out Lieutenant Commander Amy Walsh from the sensor station. Multiple vessels engaged in combat. Rodriguez nodded. He had been expecting this. The Viridian fleet was supposed to be making their last stand here against a Krex advance force. The question was whether there would be anyone left to save. Put it on the main screen, he ordered. The forward display lit up with a view that made several crew members curse under their breath. The battle was not going well for the aliens. Elegant Viridian ships, looking like flying cathedrals made of silver and crystal, fired streams of bright plasma at their attackers. But their enemies absorbed the energy weapons like they were nothing more than flashlights. The Krex bioships were nightmares made real. Each one looked like a giant insect crossed with a warship, all chitinous armor and organic curves. They moved through space like living creatures, twisting and writhing as they closed in on their prey. Acid projectiles sprayed from their weapon mouths, eating through the Viridians' energy shields like they didn't exist. "My God," whispered Commander Pete Harrison from the tactical station. "Those alien ships are getting slaughtered." As they watched, another Viridian vessel broke apart under concentrated Krex fire. The beautiful ship simply dissolved as acid ate through its hull. Escape pods launched desperately into space, but the bioships ignored them. The Krex weren't interested in prisoners. "Incoming transmission," Walsh reported. "It's from the lead Viridian ship." "Put them through," Rodriguez ordered. The main screen split to show Ambassador Zekthor's face. The alien's purple skin was pale with fear, and his 4 eyes showed pure desperation. Behind him, his ship's bridge was filled with smoke and sparks. "Human vessel. Thank the stars you have arrived." Zekthor's voice cracked with emotion. "We have lost half our fleet in the past 2 hours. These monsters are unlike anything we have faced before." Rodriguez studied the battle display. 12 Viridian ships remained out of what had probably been twice that number. The Krex had only lost 2 vessels, and those looked like they had been damaged by lucky shots rather than destroyed outright. "How do you usually fight wars, Ambassador?" Rodriguez asked. Zekthor looked confused by the question. "We conduct honorable warfare, Captain. Precise plasma strikes to disable enemy weapons and engines. We aim to minimize casualties on both sides. When defeat becomes inevitable, civilized beings surrender and negotiate terms." "That's your problem right there," Rodriguez said bluntly. "You're trying to fight an honorable war against an enemy that doesn't know what honor means." The alien's confusion deepened. "I don't understand." Rodriguez turned to his crew. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Load all tubes and prepare for combat." Warning lights bathed the bridge in harsh red light. Throughout the ship, humans rushed to their positions with the practiced efficiency of a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Unlike the aliens, they didn't look scared. They looked angry. "Captain Rodriguez," Zekthor's voice was desperate. "You have only one ship. There are 17 Krex biovessels in this system." "I can count, Ambassador," Rodriguez replied. "Now, I suggest you get your remaining ships clear of the combat zone." The Retribution surged forward into the battle, Where the Viridian ships had moved with graceful curves and elegant maneuvers, the human warship charged straight at the enemy like an angry predator. Its hull was scarred with the marks of previous battles, and weapon ports bristled along its sides like the spines of a sea urchin. The Krex bioships noticed the newcomer, and several turned to face this new threat. Acid projectiles sprayed toward the human vessel, but Rodriguez had been expecting that. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Pattern Delta 7. The Retribution suddenly shifted direction in a way that would have been impossible for the organic Krex ships. Instead of the flowing movements they were used to, the human ship jerked and twisted through space in sharp, unpredictable angles. The acid shots missed by hundreds of meters. "Target the lead bioship," Rodriguez commanded. "All weapons, full spread." What happened next shocked every alien in the system. The Retribution didn't fire elegant plasma beams or precisely targeted energy bolts. Instead, it unleashed hell in the form of weapons the galaxy had never seen. Used in space combat, railgun slugs accelerated to significant fractions of light speed hammered into the Krex vessel's armor. The kinetic projectiles, moving faster than most alien ships could travel, punched through the bioarmor like it was made of paper instead of evolved defensive plating. Nuclear-tipped missiles followed, each one carrying the destructive power of a small star. They detonated against the bioship's hull in brilliant flashes that lit up the entire system. The Krex vessel, which had been absorbing plasma fire for hours without serious damage, suddenly found itself dealing with raw atomic fury. But the real surprise came with the third wave of weapons. Depleted uranium rounds designed not just to penetrate, but to cause maximum internal damage through radiation and heavy metal poisoning. The bioship's living systems began to fail as radioactive material spread through its organic structure. The massive Krex vessel, larger than 3 Viridian ships combined, convulsed like a dying animal. Cracks appeared along its chitinous hull as internal explosions tore it apart from within. With a final shudder, it broke apart in a shower of organic debris and glowing fluids. Complete silence filled the communication channels. Every alien in the system stared at their displays in shock. "How?" Zekthor's voice was barely a whisper. Rodriguez was already targeting the next Krex ship. "Simple, Ambassador. You fight to minimize casualties. We fight to win." The remaining bioships turned toward the human vessel with what could only be described as rage. They had never faced an enemy that could actually hurt them, let alone destroy one of their number so completely. They attacked as a group, spraying acid and launching living projectiles that writhed through space like angry snakes. The Retribution's defense systems came online, and the aliens got another surprise. Point defense guns filled space with streams of metal projectiles, shredding the biological ammunition before it could reach the ship. Flare dispensers launched clouds of burning metal that confused the bioship's organic sensors. And when one of the Krex vessels got too close, the Retribution's hull-mounted weapons fired steel spears the size of telephone poles directly into its brain structure. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Kethra from her command ship. "Their weapons are so primitive, so brutal." "Effective is the word you're looking for," Rodriguez replied, targeting a third bioship. "We've been perfecting the art of killing for 10,000 years. You've been trying to fight wars without casualties. There's a difference." The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. One by one, the Krex bioships fell to weapons they had no defense against. Their evolved armor meant nothing against kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Their adaptive abilities couldn't cope with nuclear fire and radioactive poisoning. When the last bioship broke apart under concentrated railgun fire, the system fell silent except for the hum of damaged engines and the crackle of radioactive debris. Rodriguez opened a channel to the surviving Viridian ships. "Ambassador, this is Captain Rodriguez. The immediate threat has been neutralized." Zekthor's image appeared on the screen, but the alien looked different now. The fear was gone, replaced by something that might have been awe or terror. "Captain, you destroyed 17 Krex vessels in one battle. Our combined fleets had managed to destroy 3 in 6 months of fighting." "Different approaches to warfare," Rodriguez said simply. "You fight like civilized beings trying to resolve a dispute. We fight like apex predators trying to survive." "But the brutality," Zekthor whispered. The complete destruction, the lack of mercy. Rodriguez's expression hardened. Ambassador, show me one Krex prisoner your people have taken. Show me one bioship that surrendered rather than fight to the death. Show me one system they conquered where they left the population alive. The alien fell silent, unable to answer. The Kai. Krex don't understand mercy, Rodriguez continued. They understand strength and weakness, predator and prey. You've been trying to negotiate with a swarm of locusts. It doesn't work. Commander Harrison looked up from his tactical station. Captain, we're receiving long-range communications from Earth Command. Rodriguez nodded. Put Admiral Morrison through. The screen split again to show the weathered face of Earth's Supreme Military Commander. Behind him, other human officers worked at stations filled with battle reports and fleet movements. Ben, how did it go? Morrison asked. 17 enemy. Vessels destroyed, no human casualties, Rodriguez reported. 6 months after the assault on Zentar, the Galactic Council convened for what many hoped would be a celebration of victory. The great chamber aboard Harmony Prime was filled with representatives from species that had survived the Krex onslaught. But the mood was far from celebratory. Instead, there was a tension in the air that made even the veteran diplomats uncomfortable. The Krex War was over. The great horde that had terrorized the galaxy for decades lay in ruins across a dozen star systems. Their homeworld was a shattered husk, their biofleets destroyed or scattered to the far reaches of space. The remaining Krex had reverted to primitive, non-aggressive forms without their queen mothers to guide them. But victory had come at a price that no one had expected. The humans had not simply defeated the Krex. They had demonstrated a capacity for warfare that made every other species in the galaxy question whether they had made a terrible mistake in asking for Earth's help. Admiral Jake Morrison entered the chamber wearing the uniform of Supreme Allied Commander, a rank that had been created specifically for him after the victory. Behind him walked the other architects of humanity's triumph, General Carl Murphy, Colonel Diana Ross, Dr. Janet Pierce, Captain Ben Rodriguez, and a dozen other officers whose names would be remembered throughout galactic history. The humans moved with the quiet confidence of people who had faced the impossible and won, but there was something in their manner that made the alien representatives shift nervously in their seats. These were not conquerors celebrating victory. These were predators who had tasted blood and found it to their liking. Ambassador Zekthor stood at the Viridian delegation's platform, his forearms trembling slightly as he prepared to address the assembly. The elegant alien had aged visibly during the war, and his large eyes now held a knowledge that he wished he could forget. Admiral Morrison, Zekthor began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you and your people for your sacrifice. The Krex threat has been eliminated and billions of lives have been saved. Morrison nodded politely but said nothing. Around him, his officers waited with the patience of soldiers who had learned to listen before speaking. The casualty reports have been compiled, Zekthor continued. Human losses were significant. 12 ships destroyed, over 3,000 military personnel killed or wounded. We mourn their sacrifice. Thank you, Ambassador, Morrison replied quietly. They died doing their duty. Chancellor Mordun's crystal form pulsed with nervous energy as he leaned forward in his chair. Admiral, the Council has prepared a package of technology transfers and trade agreements as payment for your assistance. Advanced propulsion systems, medical technology, and manufacturing techniques that should benefit your entire species. Morrison looked around the chamber at faces that showed gratitude, mixed with something that might have been fear. That's very generous, Chancellor, but we need to discuss more than just payment. A ripple of unease ran through the assembled representatives. General Veltar uncoiled from his serpentine platform, his scales showing patterns that indicated high stress levels. What do you mean, Admiral? Veltar asked carefully. Dr. Pierce stepped forward, activating a holographic display that showed star charts marking dozens of potential threats throughout the galaxy. The assembled aliens gasped as they recognized the locations. These were systems they had been carefully avoiding for centuries, places where things lived that even the Krex had refused to challenge. During our analysis of Krex territories, we discovered something disturbing. Pierce explained. The Kreks weren't the galaxy's only major threat. They were just the most immediate one. The display zoomed in on various star systems, each one marked with warning symbols that made the aliens uncomfortable. Rogue artificial intelligence networks that had been converting entire planets into processing centers. Parasitic species that infected other civilizations and turned them into expansion vectors. Dimensional rifters that opened pathways for things that shouldn't exist in normal space. Your species have survived by avoiding these threats, General, Murphy said as he joined Pierce at the display. Marking them as restricted space, establishing quarantine zones, pretending they don't exist. But they do exist, and they're growing stronger. Admiral Morrison walked to the center of the chamber where all eyes could focus on him. The Kreks were actively hunting these other threats, keeping them contained through constant warfare. With the Kreks gone, there's nothing stopping them from expanding into inhabited space. Commander Sarah Mitchell stepped forward with tactical projections that showed expansion patterns for the various threats. Conservative estimates suggest we have 18 months before the first wave of secondary threats reaches major population centers. Worst-case scenarios put it at 6 months. The chamber erupted in panicked voices as representatives realized the implications. They had asked the humans to eliminate one threat, only to discover that doing so had unleashed a dozen others. "What are you saying?" Ambassador Zekthor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Morrison looked around the chamber at alien faces that showed growing terror. "I'm saying that the galaxy is a dangerous place, Ambassador. Your species have survived by hiding from that danger, by negotiating with it, by running away when necessary. But there are threats out there that can't be reasoned with, can't be negotiated with, and won't stop until everything living is dead or worse." General Murphy activated new displays showing human fleet deployments throughout former Kreks territories. "We're establishing defense stations, patrol routes, and rapid response fleets. The galaxy will be protected whether you want it or not." "By whose authority?" General Veltar demanded, his serpentine form coiling with indignation. "By the authority of being the only species willing and able to do the job," Morrison replied, calmly. "You asked for allies, General. You got Guardians instead." Colonel Ross stepped forward with reports from human marine units already deployed to contain emerging threats. "We've identified 17 separate incidents in the past 3 months, where secondary threats have tested former Kreks boundary systems. In each case, our rapid response teams were able to contain the situation before it spread to inhabited worlds." The implications were staggering. While the aliens had been celebrating their victory over the Kreks, the humans had been quietly taking over the role of galactic protectors without asking permission or seeking recognition. Chancellor Morden's crystal form flickered with uncertain light. "Admiral Morrison, are you telling us that humanity is now the galaxy's self-appointed guardian force?" Morrison nodded without hesitation. "That's exactly what I'm telling you, Chancellor." "And if we object?" asked Admiral Kethra, her aquatic form trembling with emotion. Morrison's expression didn't change, but something in his manner made the temperature in the chamber seem to drop. "Then you object. Earth doesn't force alliances, Admiral. We offer protection to those who want it." Dr. Pierce brought up final displays showing the scope of human military expansion. Defense satellites around vulnerable worlds, patrol ships, monitoring dangerous systems, and marine bases established at key strategic points throughout the galaxy. "The reality is simple," Pierce explained. "Your species developed faster than light travel, advanced medicine, and elegant art. You created paradise worlds and explored the galaxy in peace, but you never learned how to deal with existential threats." "We learned how to deal with them," General Murphy continued. "We became the existential threat that other existential threats have to worry about." The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of the station's engines. The aliens stared at their human allies with a mixture of gratitude, fear, and growing understanding of what they had unleashed. Admiral Morrison looked around the chamber one final time. "You begged for allies in your darkest hour, and Earth answered that call. We fought your war, paid the price in blood, and eliminated the threat to your civilizations." He paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. But in doing so, we discovered something about ourselves. We discovered that we're very good at being the galaxy's apex predators. We're very good at standing between the innocent and those who would harm them, and we're very good at paying prices that other species can't afford. Captain Rodriguez appeared on the communication display from his patrol ship at the edge of Krek space. Admiral, we're receiving reports of dimensional rifter activity in the former Outer Colonies region. Estimated threat level is moderate, but it's expanding. Morrison nodded. Dispatch the Third Fleet to contain it, Captain. Standard protocols for dimensional incursions. Understood, sir. Third Fleet is already en route. The casual efficiency of the exchange was not lost on the alien representatives. While they debated and discussed threats, the humans were already moving to contain them. Morrison turned back to the assembled aliens. This is what protection looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Not elegant debates or careful negotiations. Just humans with weapons standing between you and things that want to kill you. Ambassador Zekthor stood slowly, his forearms steady for the first time since the war began. Admiral Morrison, what do you want from us? Morrison smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. We want what we've always wanted,